Hello, hello. Welcome to the mandatory over-ambitious TBR. I feel like it's just a requirement to make one of those fairly regularly. However, I do have a reason this time, which is the Clear Your Shit readathon hosted by Andy and Art, and I'm very excited to join. I think I've been present since Clear Your Shit was invented, but by present I mean I see it on Twitter and I'm like, oh, I'm totally gonna do that, and I take a look at the prompts and I do all that, and then 4 out of 5 times I end up not making it through the end of the readathon because I am terrible at commitment. But I am much more settled in now and have access to all my own physical stacks of books to get to, so I have a lot of motivation to get through them at the moment, so that I have more room on my shelves, which is the goal of Clear Your Shit, is basically just read the books you own and get through primarily your physical TBR, which is absolutely something that I need to do. This iteration of the readathon is, I believe, the longest yet, so it runs from the beginning of November all the way through the end of December. There are, I think, 3 prompts per week, so 3 times 8 is 24 prompts total, something like that. There's a few prompts that come out over the course of the readathon because it's sort of story-based, and as you pick your strength and weakness and weapon before the readathon, then prompts based on your picks are released throughout the readathon. So obviously those, I don't know what I will fill them with, but otherwise I have a book for each prompt. Disclaimer, I am not actually going to get through all of these books. I read not enough books per month to read through all of these prompts, and I'm probably going to, have a couple other throw-ins here or there for other things I want to read. These are just this is what I would love to read for each of these prompts. Not that I'm actually going to get to all of this. I did not organize my stacks very well, but as you can see, I have plundered my bookshelves behind me. All of these are books off of my physical shelves. One other thing before we get started, I tried to make a good balance here of books I'm really looking forward to getting to next, and books that I've been putting off for far too long and will continue to put off probably. You'll see a number of Book of the Month books here because I really just want to get to them, try them, and then if I'm not feeling them, then I can get rid of them. And that's also, I typically wouldn't do this for readathon, but I'm going to count as if I DNF a book and plan to unhaul it, then that will count as having fulfilled the prompt, because the goal is to get rid of your TBR, basically, right? And that fulfills that goal. And like I said, there's already more prompts than I'll be able to read. So to start us off, the first prompt is a book with 2 main characters, and I chose Good Omens, which obviously has Crowley and Aphrodisiel, something, an angel and a demon. This also fits really well for the fantasy subreddit Book Bingo, which is something I've been doing for almost 4 years now. So this fits for the angel or demon main character prompt there. And it's just something I've been meaning to get to for a while. My roommate actually I had a version of this with the darker cover, not the show cover, but my roommate took that one, so that's fine. The weird thing, I hate the size of this book. It's such a weird dimensions. I've never seen a book this size. Anyways, moving on, the next prompt is to have a friend or someone pick between 2 books for you. I actually went a little bit above and beyond that, and I just gave my friends my TBR spreadsheet and was like, pick a book, and then another friend pick another book, and then the third friend picked between those 2 books. And lo and behold, they came up with Babel by R.F. Kuang, which, as you can tell, I started at one point and did not get incredibly far in. I've heard so much about this, and people who really, really liked it, are devastated. I know it's really sad, but people who were, devastated by it, and people who were this is just sort of, gratuitous, not gratuitous violence or something, but, in the way that the plot only serves to make the points that Kuang is trying to make. I don't know why I'm trying to explain this to you when I haven't read the book myself, but that's sort of the sense I get. It was very divisive, even for people who have read and enjoyed R.F. Kuang's works before, which I actually have not. Really was interested in it when it came out though, because I love like linguistics, and anything related to that in fantasy is really cool to me. So I'm excited to see it, to try it, and hopefully I'll enjoy it. The next prompt is a fantasy book or a fantasy adjacent book, which like obviously 80% of my TBR is fantasy, so this would be easy to fill with a number of things. I ended up going with The Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view. Arguably, Star Wars is sci fantasy, so close enough. And I picked this mostly just because I really wanted to get a short story collection in, and I didn't see another good place to get one in. This is 40 stories, but I think it's doable over the course of 2 months. If I can happen to get this into one of the other, as I said, additional prompts that they'll be adding on throughout the readathon, then my other probable pick for this square is The Unspoken Name, which I've heard is really cool. It's the beginning of a duology. I don't really remember much about it, but I've had it for a while, so this would be cool to get to. The next prompt is a book told from multiple perspectives. So for this, I am going with Labyrinth's Heart. This is the third book in the Rook and Rose trilogy. There's primarily 3 perspective characters in the prior books, but then like a few scenes from other characters. I feel like I've been saying this forever, but I'm really excited to get to this. It's just also intimidating. Not because it's a long book, just because it's the end. But I definitely think I will enjoy this. I have the audiobook, which the narrator is fantastic. So next, we have an aesthetic cover, or I think they said an aesthetically pleasing cover. There are a number of covers I think are really pretty on my shelves that I could use for this, but it felt almost wrong if I didn't use Daughter of the Moon Goddess, because I remember when this came out, like, everyone was just obsessed with this cover, and it's so pretty, and I know people really love this book, so I am wanting to give it a try. This sort of goes against the other thing about this TBR is I'm really trying not to start new series, so I'm trying to read like mostly standalones or continuing series, because there's a lot of series where I have the first book on my TBR and then I will have to buy the next book, so if I want to continue the series, which is sort of counterproductive. But in the case of this, it's a duology, and I think it stands alone fairly well. Like, I know some people didn't like the second book as well anyways, so if I wanted to just read the first one, I could. Again, I've heard great things, and I'm excited to get to it. I guess I should have said this, but like each of these prompts are based on like birth chart and like element things. So there's like a prompt for each of the birth signs. Gemini was the one that was 2 MCs or like whatever. I'm not super aware of what all the signs relate to, but they do fit in there. And then there's also like elemental prompts. So like when we get to the ones that are like a certain color of cover, they're like because of earth element or fire element, all of those sort of things. I probably should have been explaining that, but I didn't write those down to accompany my list, so just know that there's like reasoning behind these, and I think it's really cool the way it's set up. And I'm sure that the story as it comes out, as narrator tells us the story, will also be really fun. So the next prompt is for either a low stress book with like low stakes or a high stress book with high stakes. For this, I chose Swords Point by Ellen Kushner because I've heard this described as a fantasy of manners, which I think means there's a lot of nobles butting heads and duels and like all that sort of thing, but to my knowledge it's not like, oh, the world's going to end sort of thing. It's more of a like ballroom fantasy type thing maybe, which by the way I think this cover is really cool. I don't know, his cape or whatever is really pretty. So it's short, I've heard it's great. I think it has a bi main character, if I remember correctly, which is really cool, especially considering it came out in 1987. So I think that one will be fun. Next up, and this will be in the category of a book I have been putting off for a while, but the prompt is a character with ambition, and I am hoping to pick up Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. I read These Violent Delights shortly after it came out, whenever that was, I don't know, 2 years ago maybe, and no, I don't plan to reread it. I'm going to try this, see if I get into it. If I don't, I'll just probably unhaul both of them, to be honest. Like, I enjoyed the first book, but not enough to keep it around if I don't really like the duology. But I think Juliet has ambitions of like staying as the heir and, you know, and maybe improving her city. I don't really remember. I know that there's gangs in Shanghai. I don't really remember like that much about what was going on, but also I know people really liked these covers, but I kind of did not like this one, so another reason to possibly get rid of it. But I mean, maybe it'll surprise me and I'll really enjoy it. We'll see. A heavyweight or like long book. This prompt sort of annoyed me because actually a lot of my heavy long books I ended up slipping in for other prompts, or I'm just like, they're books I'm not wanting to get to yet. Like I said, I didn't want to start series, and a lot of those would be in series. This is the end of a series, and so far as the book itself that I own, it is not a heavyweight book, but it is 700 pages, so it absolutely counts. It's just, when I see prompts like this, I'm like, oh, I want to pick the biggest book I own, but that just wasn't going to happen. So, Kushal's Avatar, I actually just recently started this, but, you know, so long as I'm not 50% at the beginning of November, I think that's fine. And I expect to absolutely adore it. I've loved these books so far. They're just so, like, comfy for me to read. I don't know what it is about it. The writing is a bit archaic, and like there's definitely a lot of violent and terrible things happening in parts of these books, but I love spending time with Fijiri, whose name I still don't know how to say. I do have the audiobook for this one, so maybe I'll figure it out, and I'm excited to finish up this trilogy. I've been putting it off. Again, with finishing up trilogies that I really love, I'm like, I don't really want to, but there's more books after this one, so it's fine. I had to get up to grab this next one and ended up knocking my camera, so that's why the perspective has probably changed. I'm filming without a self-facing viewfinder, which is terrifying, so I have no idea. But hopefully, you know, everything's good. I'm in frame. That would be great. This next one, I like really debated. I was gonna go with something else. Oh, I accidentally skipped a prompt earlier, so I'll just tell you about these two together. So, I was going to put the Druid's Tune for this prompt, which is an earth-based cover, like green, brown, or just earthy in general. And I was going to use the Druid's Tune for this, which, I mean, the outside of the cover is more blue, but it's about druids, so it's super earthy, right? I ended up putting this under the lightweight prompt instead, because it's like 200 some pages and very light as a book. This one, I have no idea really anything about it. I just picked it up because I was at a secondhand store and I saw the word druid, and I knew I needed to read a druid book or multiple druid books if I'm trying to do multiple bingos for the fantasy subreddit bingo. So I was like, this obviously has a main character who's a druid. That's pretty much all I know. But it says it's a crackling good story in the tradition of C.S. Lewis. And you know, Lewis wrote some fun stuff, so hopefully. But that's for my lightweight book prompt, and then instead for the earthy booked prompt, I went with Neom. This is actually an ARC copy, which I didn't receive as an ARC, but I got for free from Beautifully Bookish Bethany when she was giving out books to patrons. I didn't actually know anything about this, but the cover's really pretty, and then I found out that the main character is a robot, which again, great option for the book bingo, and it sounds really cool. It's something about the robot is like looking for a rose and then ends up saving the city or something like that. It's really big font. I think it'll be fun and quick to get through. Next we have a book that has a child in it, which I struggled with, to be honest. Not that, like, I'm sure there are plenty of books I read that have random children at some point, but I wanted it to be like somewhat significant maybe, or just I couldn't think of something that would fit this well. And then I remembered Saga. And pretty much every volume of Saga, I mean, from the very first one, is about, like, their kid. Well, not exclusively about their kid, but, like, that's one of the major points of it. And she's growing up throughout these books. None of these have her on the front, apparently, but there she is. I believe I have read through volume 6, and I think there's 11 volumes out, but I have 10 of them. So I might do some rereading though. So I'll read at least 4 volumes, maybe more, and the child is definitely a main character. So I think that'll give me some variety in the format of books I'm getting to, and also I always need to catch up on the comics I'm reading. If we talk about books that I've been putting off for a long time, the next prompt is a book with animals in it. And this is Vultures by Luke Tarzan, which is probably one of the oldest books on my shelves here. Or like, I got this when I started getting into booktube, like watching booktube, the like book community online the first time. So fairly early on, like 4+ years ago. Obviously I have older books than that, but most of my older books I have read at some point. It's really pretty. I always thought it was cool. There's like this black page in the center for Act 2. I have read a novella in this universe, and it's very sort of mindfuck, which sometimes I really enjoy, and then sometimes it's like I need to know something that's going on, or I just can't connect at all. So I'm not sure which category this will fall into. I'm hoping because it's a little bit longer, I'll be able to connect with it. I think there are actually vultures in this. If there aren't, whatever. It has the title of an animal, so that works. I am a little apprehensive, but also excited to finally get to this one. This next one I wrote down on my cheat sheet as like edifying. So I think it was something about like a book you feel like you'll learn something from, which I interpreted as like a nonfiction, because there's plenty of nonfiction on my TBR I need to get to. And I had a tough time because there's like nonfiction that I should get to more than others versus, you know, the ones that I feel like I'll enjoy more or that will be easier to get through. I ended up choosing The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. I've heard so many good things about this. I mean, I know that it was really popular because of John Green, who I don't actually think I've read a book from before. I think it will be very consumable and very interesting, and I think it'll give me maybe some interesting new perspectives on things. We'll see. I've heard it's sort of hopeful about the world in a way that I probably am not. But also, again, it's a Book of the Month book, so it's one of those that I just want to get to and try out. Another Book of the Month book for the fire element. There's a book with a red cover. I was so tempted here to pick Savage Legion because it's just like perfect for a fire element. And there's still the possibility that I might. But really, I want to read Savage Legion enough that I will do so without the motivation of having it as an option for Clear Your Shit. And also, it's going against my rule of being the beginning of a series where then I would have to buy the next books in the series, which is against the principle of trying to undo my TBR. So I decided to go with Winter Counts instead. I believe this is a indigenous like horror or thriller type thing. I don't remember much about it other than that. Next, I guess I put these all in a row, but we have a book that was a hot topic at some point. I think The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo absolutely fits that. It was like really popular at one point. I've also heard a little bit of controversial stuff about it. I think about the main character being Latina, maybe, or something around that, if I'm remembering correctly. It was a while ago. And how that was written. Like, not just the fact that she's Latina, but how that was written. So it's absolutely fits under a hot topic, and I don't really remember that much more about it. But I'll try it out. Getting towards the end here, this one I kind of finessed to fit the prompt. The prompt is a book with a mother in it. And again, I was like, what books do I have that really have mothers in them? But I did think of a few definite examples. However, I really wanted to get this in. So if this fits one of the other additional prompts they add in, then I'll probably go with like something else for mother. I want to continue the Rokosugen saga. My next book is The Warrior's Apprentice. The book before this absolutely was about a mother. It's about Cordelia. This one's about her son. So I assume that it mentions Cordelia in some capacity. However, he's grown up here, and I think he's like away from home doing space battles and things. So I don't know how much of a presence Cordelia has in this book. However, I don't really care because she's fantastic, and for me, she's like my main pull to this series so far, even though most of the series is about her son. So that's like how it's related to a mother character to me. Another one that I finessed a little bit. The next prompt is a book that has to do with like fish or oceans or something. And again, this is one where there were better options. I could have gone with the Live Ship Traders book or with the Bone Ship, but both of those are starting series, and I'm not trying to do that right now. So I went with To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, which is a book that I really need to get to. I was so excited when this came out because I was a big fan of Christopher Paolini's Aragon series when I read it back in middle school or whatever. And this just sounded really cool to me when it came out. I read like a significant percent of this. I want to say maybe 40%, which I guess isn't a huge, but like it's a big book. I read a lot of it, and I did that through the audiobook because it was before I had a physical copy. But this is a big book. It's taking up a lot of room on my TBR. I'm going to give it another go. If I don't get through it, I'll just unhaul it. If I do get through it and enjoy it, wonderful. I still don't think I'm going to pick up the next book in this universe because fractal verse or whatever it is, I've heard is like pretty bad, or I've heard is even worse. And if I am going to continue reading with Paolini, it's going to be a reread of the Aragon series in preparation for his new Aragon book, Murtagh, that he's putting out. So yeah, I don't care one way or the other with this one, really. Like, it's a disappointment because I was really excited for it to begin with, but at this point, just trying it out and getting it off my shelves is a plus. Next is a book with a mystery in it. And surprise, surprise, I have an actual mystery book, which I don't think is in any way speculative. I say surprise because I never read those. I can't even think of one. Like, and then there were none for school. But other than that, Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I've tried books by Silvia Moreno Garcia a number of times, including Mexican Gothic and Gods of Jade and something. Yeah. I read both of those. I enjoyed Mexican Gothic more of the two of them. I don't think Silvia Moreno Garcia is necessarily the perfect author for me, but if I try this and enjoy it, great. If I try it and DNF it, again, off my shelf. Getting towards the end here, next for the water element, we have a book with a blue cover. This is, again, one of my, like, older TBR books, The Silence of Bones by June Her. I believe it's also actually a mystery and perhaps not speculative. I think it's about a young girl going back home looking for her mother. Something along those lines. I don't remember exactly. But I anticipate that I'll actually really like this one. And it has a cool cover. So it's got that going for it. Finally, the last one is an emotionally intense or character-driven book. I chose The Perishing by Natasha Dion. I believe this is very, like, character-driven sort of thing from what I've heard about it. It's not, it's like very lightly speculative because there's like some time travel things. I think she wakes up in a different time as her own. I don't really remember where it goes from there, but I guess I'll find out. So that is all the prompts that we have so far. Like I said, there's a few others that'll be added in. There's also free book spaces if I feel like picking up some other things off my TBR. Not that I'm going to have time to do so. But there are a few other things happening over the next 2 months that I'll be reading that I just figure I'll put in here as well. First of all, my friends off of Discord, 4 of us who have fairly different taste in books have decided to come together and do like a monthly read-along where one of us picks a book, but like also we made a spreadsheet of like what books we all own and maybe have interest in, and then each month one of us picks a book for the rest of us to read, and we will discuss it and see, you know, how our different tastes apply. And for the first book, surprisingly enough, when we looked at what we all owned and were interested in, all but one of us owned Gideon the Ninth, and my other friend who didn't own it was also very interested in it. Now, to be fair, I bought Gideon the Ninth for one of them like 3 years ago at this point, so I also sort of provided this, but everyone was down to read it. I've already read Gideon, so it's a reread for me, but when am I not down to reread Gideon? I actually, both times I've read Gideon was through audiobook or ebook, so I'm excited to maybe annotate this because I think that'll be a blast, and to just like see how they get on with it, because I'm so interested. I'm interested if they'll get like really annoyed keeping track of characters, because if you're not used to sort of bigger, you know, in bigger sci-fi fantasy, I feel like we do that a lot, though even still it was difficult for me the first time I read this one. And like the world building aspects, like the magic in this is really cool, so I think it'll be interesting to see for those of my friends who don't often read adult science fiction or fantasy, how that comes across, and also how they feel about the ending, if they end up hating me. We'll see. I'm very excited to get to this, and Even though it's a reread, it is technically a book I physically own, so I might slot it into Clear Your Shit somewhere. The other options, however, are not books I physically own. One of them is Walking Practice, which is for one of the book club groups on the fantasy subreddit. I can't remember which one right now, but it's a recently translated Korean horror, maybe like body horror type thing. I don't really remember, but I saw that it was short and that I could get it from my library and that it looked interesting. So I might pick that one up. Oh, I completely forgot to mention at the beginning of this, but also next month, Words and Wonder and a few other book bloggers, especially on Twitter who I follow, are running Sci-Fi Month in November. So I put a number of sci-fi on here. They also just do like daily prompts, not necessarily like reading prompts, but things to just like talk about what sci-fi you've enjoyed, all that sort of thing. And their read-along book this year is Behind the Throne. I do not recall the author. I don't really remember what it's about. I did see that it's easy to get from my library. And it's just always fun to like read along and discuss with everyone. So I might try out that one. I don't even know how many books I've shown you in this video. Should I count? I should count. Let's see. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So far they've released 20 prompts. I believe there's another 3 or 4 prompts that they're releasing throughout the readathon. In addition to that, the alternate and the read-along books I showed you puts me at over 25 books. For 2 months, that's like 13 books a month, which is possible, and I've done it before, but a lot of these books are really big, and I have not been reading at that speed recently. So we'll definitely just have to see how much I can get to. And I'm hoping after, maybe a little ways after Clear Your Shit, to be able to do an unhaul video with a significant number of books, because that would be fabulous. Not that I don't love having, you know, all the books on my shelves, but I am constantly increasing the number of books on my shelves, and sometimes it needs to go the other way. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you haven't already, you should absolutely consider joining Clear Your Shit. It's a ton of fun, and you don't have to do a single book per prompt. You can combine prompts, you can do whatever. They don't give a shit. Like, literally, narrator does not care, just do not ask. But yeah, thanks for watching. Free to like, subscribe, maybe leave a comment if you feel so inclined. Let me know what your reading plans are for the end of the year. I know a lot of people do like end of the year type projects, which I would love to do something. I also considered going back to see what 2023 releases I missed that I still want to get to. But that's gonna have to be like a 2024 project because there's just no way, and especially with needing to get to the books that I own. Alright. I have talked for too long. Thanks for coming along. See you in the next one.